And welcome back, everyone. This is hour two of tonight's show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're watching us on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, Tuber, and listening to us throughout Ontario, the northern parts of the state of New York, Pennsylvania, and around the world on our good friends at your hometown radio, Classic 1210, CFAJ. There we go. Art Levine's back with us. CFAJ AM, streaming us on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. In the first hour of tonight's show, Art Levine was our solo guest, and he is an award-winning investigative journalist whose work has spanned politics, public health, national security, and government oversight, and we had a great time talking. This man can tell a story that makes you wonder but laugh at the same time. He's a great investigative reporter, and what we're doing is we're now bringing Kal Korff on the show to join us. Kal and Art are very good friends, and as you know, we had Kal on last week talking about the strange, the weird, the bizarre, and the truth about it, because Kal Korff, in case you've forgotten, he's a controversial and often polarizing investigative researcher, author, and media commentary. He's known for his assertive, no-nonsense approach to debunking what he considers pseudoscience, misinformation, and paranormal fraud. With a background that spans technology and analysis, got that, Art, counterterrorism, commentary, and UFO investigations, Kal Korff has made a career out of challenging widely accepted narratives, from the Roswell incident and alien autopsy claims to conspiracy theories surrounding high-profile historical events. Joining me now is Kal Korff. And Kal, good seeing you, my friend.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure having you. And let's bring on Art Levine. Hey, Art. There we are.
Hi.
The three amigos. I must say that you had me in stitches during certain parts of the first hour. Art, thanks very much for joining us. And Kal, what is your connection with Art? How did you guys meet? And I know you've done a lot of work together, so share the wealth.
Well, it began in 1997, just before the 50th anniversary of the Roswell UFO crash myth of 1947. I called my publisher, Prometheus Books, and I said, what are you doing for the 50th anniversary of Roswell? I, at that point, kind of understood that America, for better or for worse, is an anniversary society, which I think is actually pathetic, but that's the way we roll. So Prometheus shocked me, and they said, we're not doing anything. And I said, why not? Roswell was solved years ago. It's mogul. And they said, well, because everybody's saying it's real and we don't have anything. And he said, and we rejected Carl Flock's book. Now, Carl Flock was a good researcher. He had independently found the mogul connection. He actually kind of got the idea from Bob Todd. Let's be blunt about it. Bob Todd was the first to discover it. But I said, why did you reject Flock's work? He's one of the better investigators. And they said, because he concluded that both mogul and the UFO, that mogul brought down the UFO and that both crashed. That's ridiculous. So they rejected that book. So I said, look, if I write what happened, will you publish it? They're like, yeah. So they said, that's great, but you got 6 weeks to do it. So what I did is I did one big brain dump, called the professor, Charles Moore, who ran Project Mogul, introduced myself, told him what I was doing, and I said, I need some quotes. I got everything else figured out, but I want some original quotes from you. And he told me an interesting story real quick, and this segues into how Art and I met. He told me that he had met Stanton Friedman years ago in Socorro, New Mexico, and Don Berliner, that Friedman had put an ad in the paper soliciting people from the 509th Bomb Group, anybody who might know information about Roswell. Stan would run these ads. That's what a competent researcher does. They're putting the word out there that they're looking for witnesses. So what happened is he met him at the hotel, and he brought mogul debris with him and showed him everything. And he said Friedman got so flustered that he accused him of being part of the cover-up and stormed out of the room. And I put that in the book, So I was like, okay, that reminds me of some of the BS that I had to put up with him. But anyway, so now the book is coming out, and I'm literally the only book out there saying it's mogul, not aliens. But there's Colonel Corso's book coming out, and everybody knows that's going to be the hot seller, truth be damned. But I can't take it out yet because it hasn't been out yet. I don't have psychic powers. So Art and I get in touch, and he's doing this series of articles for MSNBC back in the days when MSNBC was co-owned by Microsoft. And I was getting ready to get on a Boeing, and I wrote the book real quick before that so I could have my plate clear of Boeing, and pounded it out, appeared on the All Day Show. Art did his pieces, a couple of them, both on the Roswell status and investigation. And I'll never forget, he calls me out of the blue one time. Art calls me and he says, "You're not going to believe what fake Dr. Kevin Randall said." That's my name for him because he has a fake PhD. He said, "Randall saying Roswell is not convincing, it's not compelling. The evidence makes him throw up if he had to rely on it, today." And that was shocking because here's Randall touring all over the country with that witness, Frank Kaufman. And then we later debated on an ABC affiliate out of Como TV in Seattle. And they lost that debate. But interestingly, they wouldn't let Art on the show. Would have been both of us against them. And the producer explained afterwards it would have been too much, expose in one direction. So that's kind of how we met. And then we stayed in touch. He also did some articles with U.S. News and World Report. We have a lot of interest in common, and we just work well together. So when I interviewed him when I was overseas with the Indian media, I let him know what I was doing, which was to bring him back to 97 when I launched on July 4th, Operation Pandora's Box, which was my name for this effort to try to expose the top hoaxes and try to see if it would be possible to prosecute some of the UFO scammers. And that was years before TTSA happened and all that stuff. When that happened, the effort gained momentum to go after those people. I worked with Art for 18 months, and he wrote his 3 exposés. Spaceship of Fools, to me, is probably the best expose ever written on these frauds. And it's got tons of links in there, hyperlinks, and it's best to go to Art's articles because there's massive links in there with original whistleblower documents from real stuff that was turned against these guys to the government. Some of the evidence that was submitted in the formal complaints, you actually see it there for the first time. Art was the first to publish it.
You talk about frauds. What kind of fraud are you talking about here, Cal?
By the way, can I interrupt for one moment?
Sure you can.
Legal protection is when we say the word fraud about any company or individual, at least when I speak, we're referring to alleged fraud because unfortunately nobody has been prosecuted and nobody has been brought to civil liability because of it. But the plain facts, as Cal has unearthed and I've done some additional reporting, does indicate fraud has occurred. And by the way, when he says TTSA, he means To the Stars Academy, which was this program that brought in a lot of the modern day alleged charlatans we see now on shows like Age of Disclosure, including especially Luis Del Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and Hal Puthoff. And it was led by rock star Tom DeLonge from Blink 182. And it became the main pusher of it and raised millions of dollars. And that's what he's referring to.
So what is the alleged fraud then?
The alleged fraud in this case, and you have to take each individual, each instance, it's like every UFO sighting. Yeah. Sometimes there's a common arc or cross overlap, but you have to take each case on its own individual merit. So in the case of TTSA, To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, they sold stock to investors. and they claimed they were building a spaceship with warp drive. They were responsible for leaking in part, playing a role in these Tic Tac videos.
Hold on here.
Yeah, warp drive. Scotty would be proud.
Based on alien materials that they had recovered.
Yeah, which were the fake arts parts Roswell hoax stuff.
And people actually bought into this?
Yeah, they did. And the investors, let's be honest, they didn't get their money back. That's a politically correct way of saying they got screwed.
Yeah.
So what I did is I called up the SEC and I said, look, are you aware of this? And they had actually heard a few complaints. Well, okay, are you doing anything? And I spoke to the senior legal officer at that time, and she was really excited, and I was happy to start sending her stuff. And then what happened is, you may remember the big mortgage scandal, Dodd-Frank reforms, and all that stuff. Well, they were more in name only, because as I found out the hard way, and I wasn't the only one, there were many victims. Out of that scandal, they created a new position called ombudsman, which is supposed to oversee what the SEC is doing and, put their nose in the tent and make sure everything's okay. So it turns out that this ombudsman was bounced out of the SEC after shredding and throwing away files, including complaints. And she would fake these spreadsheets and say, here's what she did. I'm not making this up. We were shocked.
Totally true.
And so what happened is I told Art, I'm done with this because I'm filing these complaints. There's people home, but nobody's doing that. I can't. What the hell is going on? And I said, I'm just going to give it to you. Screw them. We're just going to go with it, release in the public. So then I get a call from the SEC. I won't say panicky, but a little, they were concerned. And they're like, no. We apologize. We've taken care of this problem. Please refile. And I told her, I said, there's 12,500 slides. I can't redo this. And she's like, well, just pick your top 10. Then it's like top 50. So we compromised on the top 75 out of 12,500 odd. And Art has published those. I gave them to him and a lot more. And in there, you see the complaints again, Hal Puthoff, Tom DeLonge, the Ron Pandolfi of the CIA. You'd recognize all the names. And I investigated over 400 people. And so the fraud is investor fraud for stocks. In the case of Nick Pope and Stephen Greenstreet, Nick Pope is a fraud. He never was the UK's Ministry of Defense UFO director. They've never had any such position.
What was he?
He was just a
clerk
who pushed paper, who handled landing.
So, right, listen, I hate to do this. I've got to take a break, not to mention a few aspirins.
So that's a different example of fraud. You go into town, you say, hey, pay money to see the former, the real Fox Mulder, right? No.
Yeah.
Nick Pope is the British Louis Elizondo, or Louis Elizondo is the American Nick Pope. They're very.
I stand by. I've got to take a break. We'll be back on the other side with Kal Korff and Art Levine. This is why I say, Exonation, fact is stranger than fiction. Let's talk about warp drives and alternative whatevers when we come back. Don't go away.
Where the waters gleam shines a sign from a Christmas tree, from Clifton Hill to the parkways glow. The magic grows as the night winds blow. Families gather, hearts open wide. Children's laughter fills the sky. From far and near. snowflakes falling on Ontario Street. Downtown lights are shining soft and sweet. Voices laugh and sleigh bells near. It's the magic time of year. From Port Dalhousie to Meriton's glow, families gather where warm hearts go. There's peace and love. The world feels right on this gentle Christmas night. It's Christmas in St. Catherine's, where the well and waters gleam. Children's eyes like diamonds bright, shining with a dream. The church bells ring, the choir sing, of hope that never fades. Oh, Christmas in St. Catherine's, where memories are made.
All right. I've taken a couple of aspirins. I've gone outside, breathed some fresh air. I was tempted to take a couple of shots of tequila, but I decided that'll come afterwards. With all this going on, how come nobody's done nothing before now? You two guys are stepping up to the plate and you're calling a spade a spade.
Well,
why has this gone under everybody's radar?
I'll give you my view, and then Cal's been following these issues longer than I have. First of all, there is an exception in terms of, even though he's been given platform to Nick Pope, although not as great, is Stephen Greenstreet is literally the only reporter in a large scale publication who has done skeptical reporting and debunking. Literally no one. And to me, the analogy to this, although it's not as deadly, is the way the media went all in following the lead of the New York Times on WMD in Iraq. It was overwhelming. And the New York Times said it must be true. So all the media launched it. The only exception was the Night Bureau, and there's a movie about it, the Night Bureau, that's affiliated with the Miami Herald and stuff. They were the only journalists in mainstream important raging questions, and they were drowned out by the overwhelming rush to support this mythology that led to the deaths of thousands of U.S. soldiers and nearly a million. What I'm saying is it's not as deadly as the result of it, but this willingness for clickbait and to accept bogus claims in a way that they really shouldn't has contributed significantly. And then there's, a few others. There's Jason Colavito, there's Mick West, there's Skeptic Magazine, but they've been drowned out by this increasingly monopolized media that is eager to push out this stuff because it's good for clickbaits, and all critical thinking has abandoned. And I have some examples, and I'm sure that Cal does as well. What's your take, Cal?
Well, you mentioned Stephen Greenstreet. Greenstreet has done some very good exposés of Lou Elizondo, and I'm sorry, let's be honest, easy targets. But the problem is, and this is where it gets really frustrating, Stephen Greenstreet has co-hosted some of his stuff with fraud Nick Pope. So you have to appreciate how ripe this is for what I call ufology. Ufology is when people make statements and conclusions about UFOs which are not derivable from verifiable data, known as facts. The thing that makes facts inviolate is anybody can verify them. Ufology is a scientific study of UFO data, period. Nothing more, nothing less. Ufology, again, is when people make statements or conclusions about UFOs which are not derivable from credible data. Credible data is data anybody can verify. Mm-hmm. So imagine you're Stephen Greenstreet. You've got the New York Post, owned by Murdoch of Fox, and he's exposing Lou Elizondo, who is the American version of Nick Pope, while hosting with Nick Pope, who's a fraud.
I don't think he hosts as much as he used to.
Then he wouldn't acknowledged this and still hasn't come clean. And then the problem is Murdoch owns many publications. So
Right.
while the one is saying with one leg truthful and the other leg he's with a fraud, Nick Pope, but all his other publications, Fox, are saying it's all real.
Yeah, Fox has been among the biggest purveyors of they're better known for misinformation on their Stop the Steal and the Venezuelan hijacking of machines and of voting machines. But on this area, because it fits their narrative of a deep state cover up, and they're playing to their heart, to the base of conservatives and conspiracy thinkers, they have gone all in and given it more of a major platform than any other major organization. But the difference that is very critical here is, unlike every other political issue or scientific issue in which there's debates over vaccines and so on UFOs, there's near unanimity among the New York Times and Fox News. What else does the New York Times and Fox News agree on? Nothing, except UFOs are real and should be treated seriously.
Where did they get their proof that what they had in their article was actually legitimate?
Well, they wanted to believe. It's kind of a willful. Basically, a guy comes forward who had no real job, gives him a cock and bull story how he headed it all up, and they bought it. They had, as he points out, there's one legit staff defense person, Helene Cooper, who joined these freelance UFO lobbyist promoters on this story, and it all fell apart on so many grounds. It's unbelievable, and they've never retracted it ever. And it's because they wanted to believe, and you had two people, the dominant writers, and wanted to promote the notion that these were valid claims. And then they had these, the mysterious Navy videos that became the hook, which got as many as 1 billion views. Wow. 1 billion views. And Kal has documented just how important this story was to the bottom line of the New York Times and its online presence, and to help it weather the falling off of classified ads and advertising and pandemic era stuff. Now, but this is pre-pandemic in 2017, but they kept on harping on it because it was guaranteed clickbait. And as shameful as the 2017 article is, in about 2020, Jacques Vallée came forward with a crazy story based on some elder senior citizens making up claims as they had been fabricating throughout their lives about their jobs and their involvement in UFOs. And he based a claim that little tiny aliens came out of a spaceship in 1945 at the Trinity bomb site, okay? And this was the subject of a book he co-authored with an attractive young female co-author. And it turns out a really good writer named D. Dean Johnson totally exposed how these people had been changing their story over time, always been seeking cash, and they lied repeatedly about their actual jobs they held. So they had zero credibility, and yet the New York Times wrote a story that said, did aliens land in 1945? And just quoted Jacques Vallée, even though there'd been like 5 years of skeptical literature. They would not do this with any other topic.
How come these people that the New York Times got in bed with were not properly vetted?
Well, I don't know if you know this, Rob, but Leslie Keene, who wasn't and isn't a New York Times writer, she was with Huffington Post and some other publications. Do you know that she contacts ghosts?
Say what?
She contacts ghosts. She has a friend in England. You can ask her. Again, I don't know why the media didn't ask her this first question. I've always said to her, or anybody who believes this crap, that, hey, let's do it under scientifically controlled conditions. Everybody get their friggin' iPhones and let's see the ghost. It won't appear because it's
Yeah.
BS. But yeah, she talks to ghosts. She falls for the old hand on the shoulder, the old trick that Harry Houdini used to expose in the early 1900s.
And she has a Netflix series and a book about the supernatural and ghosts too.
Yeah. So that's one of them. And then the other person, Ralph Blumenthal, he believes in the abduction work that was done in the research. And Leslie Kean used to be with Bud Hopkins. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had Bud Hopkins' wife on the show, and
Mhm.
she said point blank that it was all a bunch of bunk.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She,
Jane, I believe her name is.
yeah, she passed away last year, unfortunately. But yeah, she had some things to say about
Did she ever?
the key. So just to tell your audience out there, because the New York Times won't, Leslie Kean can contact ghosts anytime she wants to through her buddy, who of course can't perform his chicanery under scientifically controlled conditions properly because it isn't true.
Also, when she was hyping Robert Bigelow's project and attributing it to Lou Elizondo, she then subsequently served on the board. This is a so-called journalist, served on the board of an afterlife research foundation founded by Bigelow. Did not consider. So what happened is she writes her story praising to the skies the UFO program is so important and tribute to Elizondo, ignores completely Skywalker. The article's published, it boosts her publicity, and the thing explodes. Then she joins Bigelow's afterlife death thing, and they give $50,000 awards each year to the person with the best afterlife expose. And the first winner was a guy whose son had claimed to fight in World War II. And then it turns out the kid had been exposed to endless amounts of History Channel, World War II things and books. And this guy was given $50,000 and Leslie Kean signed off. And so what happened is when she came back, she couldn't sell the David Grush story to the Times, the Post, or other legitimate publications. So she and Blumenthal shopped David Grush's story without vetting it and shopped it to the Debrief, which was a pro UFO newsletter, which broke it in early June, and by July, they were before Congress.
Stand by, guys. We've got to take our break at the bottom of the hour. Kal Korff and Art Levine are very special guests this hour. And wow, from the government giving Bigelow $22 million. And then, was this part of the $22 million?
No, that was a different thing.
Oh, was it? All right, stand by, guys. We'll be back as we shake the world up more. Don't go away.
Christmas night. It's Christmas in St. Catherine's, where the well and waters gleam. Children's eyes like diamonds bright, shining with a dream. The church bells ring, the choir sing of hope that never fades. Oh, Christmas in St. Catherine's, where memories are made. Laura's baking cookies, the scent fills the air. Neighbors wave a greeting everywhere. Sophie's paw prints. Shine bright on Queen Street tonight. Snow drifts softly through the glow. Families gather, hearts full of cheer as carols whisper low. But out in the cold where sirens sing, there are angels dressed in blue, and others in red with hearts of gold. They stand the whole night through. On the night of nights, they're watching still while the world lies calm and still through Christmas Eve and Christmas.
And welcome back. Oh my God. I'm listening, and I know you guys, and I know that you're not fabricating all this.
Nope.
Why hasn't somebody else jumped on this? Like I understand you, Cal. I've known you for many years. I know you're a no bull guy. Art Levine, you're a no bull guy. But all these years, the public's been duped.
Yeah, so let me read. I wanted to read the quote from Lou Elizondo in the New Age of Disclosure documentary that I wanted to read to you and indicate the reality of it.
Okay.
So he said that we have 80 years of lies and deception that frankly have ruined some people's lives, and nobody wants to take responsibility for this. I would agree with him, except flip it completely and put it on the UFO community and UFO influencers. It's 80 years of no evidence. And some of the people promoting these views do actually believe it because they might have seen things that have prosaic explanations.
Uh-huh.
Now, I have would love a producer for Nova or a PBS Frontline to contact me, and we could go do an actual investigative documentary. I'm hoping to develop my findings into a book, but it is actually really shocking that this has been allowed to flourish for so long. And the other point is, I don't think there's another arena in American life of any kind of business in which people make repeated, false, disprovable claims and not face any legal, regulatory, or criminal consequences.
Well,
that's why I think Cal's work is so important, because he's trying to do that.
Well, you do have that person in the White House right now. He makes claims all the time that he can't prove. And of course, there's never any legal ramifications for all his jibber jabber. So, I can't. Craig says I can't talk about President Trump. Okay, sorry about that, Craig.
Okay.
If he calls, I'm not here. No, but I'm just kidding. It seems that you've got something as serious as this. So many people have been duped. And nobody's doing anything except you guys.
Well, that's where now this sounds like puffery, but there's very solid skeptical work that's gone on for decades, including going back to Carl Sagan, etc. Mm-hmm. But what Cal has done that no one in the skeptical community has done is to try to hold them accountable. He's put in all this work.
Right.
When Lou Elizondo's bizarre book Imminent came out, in which even in that he backed away from calling himself the director of the program. He said he had a leading role in it. But in that book, he makes even more crazy claims that he projected an angel telepathically into the jail cell of a terrorist and shook the bed, and that he had UFO orbs going through in and out of his home regularly, and for some reason never took a photo of them. And so Cal has filed with the Council of Inspectors General, he filed with the SEC, and he very bravely filed with the publishing company that published his book, and to the corporation that owned it, and nothing was done. But I quoted it because I thought it was very valid critiques.
It is. Cal, how come nobody did nothing?
You'd have to ask the people who choose. They're not forced to abandon their responsibilities. They choose to. Again, when you have 91% of the media owned by 8 companies, that's a problem. So whose fault is that? It's the fault of the Democrats and the Republicans. Fox itself got their sweetheart deal when they were the only network who agreed to sell a phony war. So the son of the Secretary of State, Colin Powell Jr.'s son, he was head of FCC at that time. No nepotism, right? He's the only qualified guy to have that job. No one else could do a better job. Anyway, he gave Fox the green light in exchange for selling the war. They could buy up all kinds of affiliate stations and build their little empire. And then the Democrats have their controlled media. So what's interesting about, if you look at the politics of the UFO issue, it's gone full circle. It used to be a Democratic Party, largely brain fart. Now the Republicans have hijacked it. So instead of New Age crystals and Pleiadians and grays and lizard people, it's now fallen angels, the book of Ezekiel, demons in the Bible. Those are the aliens. The key was to work behind the scenes to try to sabotage the hearings, stop them, and keep anything from happening where a final appropriations language was put in a defense bill that would be passed. That was successful. Tim Burchett and some others were pulled at the last minute. They don't tell you the full story as to why. So in Operation Pandora's Box, there were kind of these little theaters that you had to focus in. You had to put stuff out on social media to get people whatever. While the real work is, talking to senators who outrank congressmen and are still old enough and remember the old school ways where, if they care, they're going to shake up some things behind the scenes, and then they fell. And that was the point. And once they failed last year and Trump got elected, my stuff was over. In fact, Art knows this. The very day that I turned in my last Council of Inspector General stuff and Secret Service stuff, because there were threats to the president, that these conspiracy nuts like to make. I literally find out that evening that Trump has fired, I think it was 13 of the 15 of them.
Right, Inspectors General.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with me, but it was just ironic to go there, finally go into a single building where I can turn in all my stuff and say, I'm done. And then I go home and boom, they're all fired, which means no oversight. So, what can you do? To quote Pink Floyd, I think, or paraphrase them, the lunatics are running the asylum. That's a problem.
What do you think the SEC is going to do, Cal?
Nothing. They will do nothing as long as they don't care. And they don't care because they're getting orders from the government not to care. It's pay to play. The thing that it doesn't surprise me, because I wrote about this from overseas, but the thing about America now is the corruption is in your face. They don't hide it anymore. At least they used to pretend.
Right.
Now it's just, how much, And
So,
that's the way to run a country.
I have a theory that that whoever's the Republican nominee for president in 2028 and even in 2026, it'll be important for the Republicans to get any kind of support they can from any quarter. So I expect more leaks pandering to the UFO conspiracy base, because it is part of the broader MAGA movement. And I've actually seen, and it's online from a few years ago, an actual QAnon recruiting document, which was training its acolytes. Now, there's no single organization, but acolytes to appeal to people based on their conspiracy interests. And UFOs is one of them. And I think that given the conspiracy mongers who are now in charge of the government, from HHS and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Kash Patel and all these people, and of course Trump, that there are going to be more leaks and leaks about UFOs to kind of get the get the UFO believers on their side, thinking that something may come out soon. That's my own prediction. I don't say it's definitely going to happen, but it's such a good form of marketing and audience building and electoral building that they're going to continue to do it, even though it's a majority of Americans right now believe that what military officials have claimed in hearings that they saw real UFOs, a majority of Americans believe that right now.
Wow.
And that's easily exploited.
Well, if you want to get the word out there, just get Pete Hegseth to do a little chat on Signal, and I'm sure that, Jesus.
Yeah. It is very. I also think that the UFO thing is a kind of benign conspiracy theory that can maybe draw some of the MAGA people away from that nasty Epstein stuff.
Unreal. So, Kal, what about the FBI? Can't they do anything since it's fraud and it's a major fraud?
It is actually the FBI's duty by law to do something. And of course, they outrank the states. The states also have an obligation. So let's look at the Billy Meyer UFO cult as a perfect example.
Okay.
They sell his photographs. His photographs are hoaxes. They've all been replicated, duplicated. And in this case, Meyer cannot say, I was mistaken. I didn't know what it was. He made the objects. He filmed them. He photographed them. He staged them. He crafted them. He's beyond 100% guilty. So that is an open and shut, slam dunk consumer fraud case. It doesn't matter what you're selling. What you're selling is knowingly not true or not possible. The subject is just a detail. It has to be something, right? So it really is that simple. And there's millions of victims. Every time they sell a photo, it's actually a felony because it's times and instances. Is anybody doing anything? I never heard back from some of the stuff that I filed last year with the California State Attorney General. But I will tell you that I've had some really good meetings with the district attorney in Nevada. And through that, things are moving forward.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our final break here. Kal Korff and Art Levine are my special guests this hour. Wow. You couldn't make this stuff up. You really couldn't.
Except a whole industry is making this stuff up in terms of their claims.
Yes, but thanks to you two, the cover's blowing off the pot. Good work, guys. We'll be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, Tuber, and of course your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, streaming us at classic1220.ca.
Gold, they stand the whole night through. On the night of nights,
Rob, I'd like to talk about Age of Disclosure, if possible.
Through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, they're never far away. When we rest safe in our homes tonight, they answer every call. To the police, the firefighters, they miss. We thank you.
High on the tree, through the soft candle glow, an angel stands watch on the world down below. Her wings shining gold, her heart full of grace. She's seen every joy in this old sacred place. She's watched her.
Art Levine and Kal K are special guests. First of all, gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on the show and for letting people know what's really going on behind the scenes here. That it seems that the UFO community is responsible for any conspiracy, because if it was to be found out that there are no UFOs, there'd be a lot of people who could not sell books, who could not go to conferences. You wouldn't have UFO conferences. It's a cash grab. And then you've got people who are selling stocks bogus, based on bogus claims, and no one is being held responsible.
Yeah.
Unbloody real. So where do we go from here, gentlemen?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I'm done as of January of this year. Operation Pandora's Box and Trojan Snails, which was the getting it done over time, are finished. There'll be some stuff that comes out over time in response to those efforts. But because all the cases were solved, either I did it myself or I worked with people who did, or I know the person who did. Again, we talked about in the last show, Bigfoot, Roswell, Billy Meyer, Loch Ness Monster, Alien Autopsy, Delphus, Kansas, Amityville Horror. It's a long list. They're all nothing. They're all solved. So it's time to move on. If there's a paranormal, it's really normal. We're just using the wrong way to describe it. And if we're being visited, it's news to the U.S. government, and that's all you need to know. A couple of things real quickly, Rob. If you look at the attacks against Art and myself online by UFO and conspiracy nuts, I don't like to call themselves extremists, but they are. Keep in mind that the definition of an extremist is someone who believes in things not grounded in reality. Subject, again, is a detail. So an extremist isn't automatically a terrorist. They just, again, believe in things that are not true, cannot possibly be true, but yet they believe in it. And what makes them extreme is their willingness to hurt people or smear them just to get their chemical reaction, whatever they're doing. It doesn't do anything. But if you look at the attacks, they're personal. They don't actually disprove anything. That should be your first red flag. Secondly, as I learned being overseas for almost 20 years, I was surprised even in talking to people in other intelligence-connected countries like Israel that Mossad spends no time looking for the Roswell debris, and all this stuff that Friedman and others said is part of the Cosmic Watergate. If no other intelligence agencies are spending any resources chasing this stuff, it's because they know better. And if you want to bug the agency which has custody of the UFO subject, I'll tell you what it is. It's not a mystery. It's the National Reconnaissance Organization, NRO. They've always had custody of it for years. They're part of Space Force now. Go ask them for their fast walker or unidentified cases. Assuming they'll talk to you, that's where you go. You don't do all this other stuff that Fox and the hearings and all that. That's just pablum and stupidity for the masses.
Well, let me make a point. When he references fast walker, that means satellites seeing these unexplainable objects that look like missiles or other objects floating by, which is a sign that he's open-minded and not just someone who's indifferent to evidence. He says that is a promising arena of pursuit. Now, where I think the way things are going right now, I don't see much in the way of solution until there's going to be some big Heaven's Gate type tragedy where another group of cultists either kill themselves or kill others around UFOs and wake people up to the dangers of conspiracy thinking. But also if there is major high impact journalism. So I think there's a wide opening in the wake of this new propaganda film, which which is called Age of Disclosure, and all these are allegations I'm making. But they're doing a lot of takedown and copyright strikes to any skeptic having less than 30 seconds of an image or video. This thing is a compilation, a greatest hits of UFO myths and people who are been proven liars or hoaxers or charlatans. And then so at some point there might be someone who comes along, like Robert Kennedy came along on the mob. There might be someone who comes along who wants to use RICO or get after this fraud. So in this new age of disclosure, what they don't tell you, that the amazing crazy stuff that they have claimed, including this, including Stratton with his wolves appearing outside his home and being chased by poltergeists. But when they give an example of an incident, they put some attention on something called the Halleman Air Force Base, which supposedly was a meeting between extraterrestrials, and they came down and they met at the airbase. Well, 2 years ago, and this is pointed out in Steve Campion's video, but he pointed to a really solid piece of investigative video analysis by a video channel called Suddenly Here. And basically, the guy got hold of the actual original video that is 8 seconds long that appeared in a 1970s documentary that was pushed by Richard Doty, an acknowledged disinformation aide. So he got so this is like, there's a bright light and it's coming down to land at Halleman. This is part of the big secret proof of the big landing. So this guy actually does it and shows, and he gets a fine, not gray YouTube version, gets the original Master C, DVD, and it's an F-14, which has on its front, he shows its wings, he shows its bright lights, and it's there to see. And he did it over 2 years ago. And this is totally ignored by Dan Farah, who, and I am sure that they might have typed in phrases like skeptical accounts of any of their 30 people, but they probably did, but paid no attention, or because they were engaged in what in civil liability is called willful negligence. This is a form of willful negligence. So the information is out there about the complete crackpot claims that almost everybody on that show had, and specific incidents where there's clear-cut debunking and they're pushing out the myths again. So if you had an aggressive state attorney general, where it could happen in California, where I'm sure it was made, if you had an aggressive state attorney general, or you had some people who cared about this kind of fraudulent claims being promoted, and it now costs $25 a pop on Amazon to see it, and the guy is doing copyright strikes to anyone critiquing it if they have even a still image or even a parody meme of the movie. So
listen, let me ask you, what's the difference between what this guy is doing and what Steven Spielberg did with Close Encounters?
That was fiction, and while it promoted belief, it was in an honorable tradition of sci-fi storytelling. And that's what's the problem, is Farah had worked with Spielberg, and apparently Spielberg is working on a new series to give TV series that may give more credibility to the UFO stuff. But when he made Close Encounters, it was a beautiful and touching. And then, of course, the other one about the alien comes down to live with the kids and all that sort of thing. When E.T., when he makes those movies, this is in an honorable sci-fi tradition by a master filmmaker. And while it promotes belief, there's nothing fraudulent about creating a fictional account. But when you get to someone like Farah, who is creating, omitting stuff, I call it the triumph of the will of UFO propaganda films. That's a reference to Leafy Riefenstahl's film promoted the Nuremberg Rally, and as Kal calls it, triumph of the deception. This is a very polished film that is filled with propaganda and omits all the negative details and the debunkings that have gone on, both about the individuals and the incidents, and is in and of itself a fraudulent product that people are paying money for. But we're going to have to wait for some change in the political and legislative or regulatory climate where people making these provably false claims can be, brought to at least civil court.
Cal.
Yeah, there's a issue that all the conspiracy nuts and extremists avoid. I encourage anybody listening to this to raise this issue to them. They accuse the government of being the problem, meaning they're in charge of the Cosmic Watergate. Well, who is the government now? It's Donald Trump. So you now have to accuse Donald Trump of being in charge of the little gray leprechaun stuffed in pickle jars at Area 51. Go ahead and accuse him of it, especially to his face, and see what happens. See, they can't have it both ways, but they try. So what I find really comical is let them twist in the wind, because they got nothing at the end of the day. The most damage they can do, which would be unfortunate, is get money from taxpayers wasted on their delusional fantasies and unicorn chasing.
But I'm sorry, Cal, I didn't mean to cut you off. But isn't that what religious organizations have been doing for years?
Yeah, but instead of doing it in the name of Jesus or whatever you want to make up, they're doing it in the name of the Pleiadians or the.
But they're not getting direct money to look for Jesus in government money. They're not getting tens of millions of dollars. And apparently, according to some accounts, Elizondo just recently went before a congressional committee in a briefing, showed them a photo that he claimed was a UFO over a field. Turns out they were two circular fields, one dark, one light, and one looked like a shadow, depending on the shot. And apparently they were seeking, by some accounts, including referenced by Stephen Campion in his recent video on it, $1 billion in funding to pursue research on UFOs. I mean, that's how crazy the thing is getting.
Gentlemen, I hate to do this, but we've run out of time. Let's do this again. I'm sure, Cal, there's still a lot to unpack in this entire thing. And
I would love to.
All I can say is thanks so much. And Cal, if you want to bring on somebody to spar with, to hold their feet to the fire, let's do it. The same goes for you, Art.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. Always a great pleasure. Cal, take care of yourself. And Art, keep the great work up, both of you. Thank you so much for both of what you're doing. And that's it for tonight, X-Zone Nation. I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and let me see, of course, streaming on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM at classic1220.ca. So until tomorrow night, everyone, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. From everyone here at the X-Zone and Relmar, good night, everyone.
High on the tree, through the soft canopy.